for me to go ahead and close out the comments?
Yes, please. We're going to close the sign-up sheet for public comment, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. First version of the Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, 30 AS16, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtitone's declaration of emergency dated March 15, 2020. This meeting of the Somerville School Committee will be conducted via remote participation. We'll post audio recording and audio-video recordings, transcripts, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the Somerville website and local access government channels, SCAT. And so I'd like to call this meeting to order with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Superintendent, will you call the roll, please?
Sorry, Chair Norman, just one second. I'm having a technical difficulty on my end.
Okay. All right, and we can take the flag down when you have a moment, Jess, please. If you're emailing us the list, take your time. Welcome, Ms. Barish.
Sorry, just give me 1 second. Okay, Dr. Phillips?
Here.
Ms. Krebshin?
Here.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtitone?
Present.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Barish?
Here.
Ms. Batone?
Present.
Dr. Ackman?
Here.
And Ms. Norman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. So the bulk of this meeting tonight will be public comment, given the complexity of the time that we're in and the decisions we need to make in the next, about reopening. But before that, there's a quick item of business. Is Finance Director Gorski with us? Because we do need to approve some of the COVID funds. Is Fran with us?
Yes, he is.
So
I am Madam Chair. Thank you.
Can you, I want to take this out of order so that you can, we'll just check it off and make sure we can get the money in. Can you explain to us what it is that is the money is, and I will be looking for a motion to approve.
Absolutely. So we are asking the school committee to accept 3 separate grants this evening. The CARES Act portion, the ESSER funding, we have discussed at our school committee finance meetings and at our regular school committee meetings. We're applying for the FY21 portion. This is the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Fund. These dollars will be used mainly to address academic needs such as social, emotional, SPED, etc. But they've been designed to be utilized to have a wide flexibility based upon Title I and SPED guidelines and other grant guidelines. The second grant that I'm asking school committee to approve, DESE has just released the CVRF School Reopening Grant. This is based upon $225 per pupil. Again, designed with wide flexibility for whatever needs districts throughout the Commonwealth need, as long as they're related to COVID expenses. So this would typically be used for PPE purchases for technology, furniture, and the like. Important just back to the CARES Act for 1 second, because I wanted to point out when the dates end of these grants. The ESSER funding is good through for expenses through September 30th, 2022. For the school reopening grant, the $225 per pupil, it's eligible for expenses from March through December 30th of the current calendar year. So this is funding that we would tap immediately and put priority on. And then the final grant that I'm asking school committee to accept this evening is the Remote Learning Technology Essentials Grant. This is a matching grant that the Commonwealth has released to cover a portion of the district's remote learning costs, including hotspots and the purchase of Chromebooks. We've already submitted this application. It's going to be based on it's a matching grant based on the relative wealth of districts. So we're not quite sure exactly how much money we're going to receive, but we do expect it to cover a portion of the additional Chromebooks that we're going to purchase.
I muted myself. Thank you so much for that. I would entertain a motion to accept those grants, and then upon a second.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Are there any questions or discussions on these 3 grants while we have Finance Director Gorski with us? Mr. Green.
This is mostly pro forma, but I assume once the final numbers are known, we'll get a memo expressing those numbers.
Yes, for the matching grant, we do not know that number and I can actually tell you this evening, and I will put that in writing as well. For the ESSER grant after the equitable distribution, we're looking at about $946,000. For the reopening grant, it is just under 1.1 million.
Are there any other questions or discussions? Superintendent, can we get, wow, we got a little sunshine there. Can we get a roll call vote to approve grants?
Certainly. Dr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Krepshin?
Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, Finance Director Gorski. And the next item of business is the public comment. And before we start, I was going to ask the superintendent and the mayor if you wanted to make a few brief remarks, and then we will get to public comment.
Sure. Madam Superintendent, I'll yield to you first. Or I can start, whatever you want.
No, Mr. Mayor, go ahead. You begin, please.
So thank you, and I apologize. I am trying to get my video resolved here, but in the meantime, I have audio to all those attending this evening virtually and tuning in. Madam Chairperson and members of the school committee. Most people are aware of or tuned into our press availability this past Friday, but let me recap for the general public, for the context needed for this conversation tonight and questions the public may have, where we stand from the city side and working in collaboration with the school district on the issue of reopening of schools, what we know, what our challenges are at this moment, and how we're approaching it. The situation on COVID-19, we're all well aware. We have flattened out the curve successfully in Massachusetts and in Somerville, although we continue and need to be vigilant. Our concern is that people's guards are down, as now we're starting to see a slight uptick in cases in parts of the region. How and if that is statistically significant is to be seen. But we're certainly concerned if we've entered parts of in the Commonwealth that raise the risk of transmission from person to person. This is troubling for us and many people because our greatest concern right now is, one, keep people healthy and safe, prevent transmission, prevent people from becoming sick and dying, and trying to continue to be successful so that we can open schools and get those families back to work, bolster our economy, but also provide the necessary support our children need so badly now. We know their development educationally and socially, emotionally has taken a hit, as well as many other parts of our lives and our society during COVID. But right now, this challenge has been dumped on cities and towns across the Commonwealth, and there is no clear path. We are required as the superintendent, I'm sure will review, to give the Department of Early and Secondary Education 3 scenarios on one, whether what it looks like with all kids back in school at once, which we've already collaboratively announced that is not a possibility, not realistic. 2, everyone starting the school virtually and not attending any classes at the beginning of the school year, or some hybrid model, which at the end of the day, when you get out of everyone actually attending school at the same time physically, you are in some hybrid model. And the question and the challenge for us as the superintendent, I'm sure will cover, is how do we approach it? Can we actually do it initially off the bat? Do we have to ramp up to it? So from the city side, that's where we are working in conjunction with the schools to try to understand how do we accomplish any version of going back to school in a way that ensures the health and safety of our teachers, our staff, our students, their families, and the general public. That requires the operational model and the operations and the physical plant of the buildings and campuses of our schools to support the educational model and whatever our goals are as a school district. That poses some challenges, as we have some buildings that one are very old or literally under construction, i.e. the high school, and we're trying to understand what needs from an operational perspective we would need to address in order to, 1, maintain a certain level of air filtration, exchange with outside air, allow for safe social distancing, all these things to support the educational model we want to start operationalizing at the beginning of September. And that is something that is ongoing now, and the superintendent go a little bit into that as she discusses, what we're faced with on the educational side and how the operation piece has to support that. On top of that, everything has to reconcile against the overall health protocols, safety guidelines, and again, one of our guiding stars to ensure the health and safety of all our school community and the community at large. We are presently working with our major healthcare partner, the Campus Health Alliance, and consulting other experts to understand is how can we and what should the model of surveillance testing be, and can we achieve it? So as when we start coming into school physically, no matter what the phasing is, or no matter what hybrid looks like, that we have a model that we can successfully execute, that helps us track and trace how the pandemic is evolving, not just in our community, but specifically here in our school community. And that is a bit of a challenge right now. We will have a plan and approach that we'll present to the school committee and the general public. And let me clarify, by surveillance testing, we mean, having everyone at a baseline level of testing before we actually physically start in any manner of school. Testing a random percentage of our school population on a scheduled basis, as recommended by experts, to understand if and how a resurgence is developing, or are there any outbreaks within our school population. Contact tracing, as we're doing locally. And some of that, there's some caveats attached to that, because now overall in the Commonwealth, we find a challenge around supplies to support testing, reagents, swabs, though it's not to the extent as it was at the beginning of the pandemic, though it's there. So all these things are coming into play and have to come into place in a synchronized way, in a coordinated way, to support any model of coming back to school. I just want to say I'm a parent of kids in the Somerville Public Schools. I want nothing more than my kids to be back in schools physically. Like the overwhelming majority of people, I know everyone wants everyone to be safe, and we want everyone to be safe, our schools, our teachers, our staff. And not only do we have to come up with an educational model or a plan around either virtual or hybrid or both, as things can change for the worse or the better around the pandemic, we need to make sure the operational piece, how we're maintaining, sanitizing, adapting the physical plant of our buildings, supports that. And then again, on the health side, how we're achieving our health goals and that is backstopped, necessarily has to be backstopped by a surveillance testing plan and a contact tracing plan. So I'm going to stop there. That's where we are right now. We don't have all the answers to all our questions. We will be getting answers progressively as we move forward on an almost daily basis. It is something to answer not only for the Commonwealth, but for all of you as a community. And as the superintendent and I mentioned on Friday, as we get answers, we will tell you what we know and we will tell you what we don't know. So I'm going to leave it there, Madam Chairperson. I'm sure during the evening I might get some questions. I hope I gave enough context to begin.
Thank you for that, Mayor Curtatone. Superintendent Skipper, would you like to say a few brief words?
I would. I actually prepared just a short statement that I'd like to read to the committee, and I can certainly submit afterwards. So this past March, the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly lived up to the meaning of pandemic, impacting all parts of our community: students, staff, parents, businesses, and community partners. One thing we clearly know is there are no easy solutions to the problem as complex as COVID. But since March, and certainly as we have moved through the summer months, we continue to try to find the best solutions for all members of our Somerville community. As in any crisis, it's important up front to name our values and to use those values as grounding for making little and big decisions. There are three that are especially important to us as we approach this reopening and the new academic year. First and foremost, always the health and safety of our school community. And this is a school community as a sacred bond that is our students, our staff, and our families, all with varying levels of risk, but with a common need to care for one another. Through always a lens of equity. Certainly we need to look at the impact to all, but there are some groups that we know from data were disproportionately impacted by the closure and by COVID itself. For instance, our newcomer ELL students, our special education students, particularly those in any of our self-contained programs, such as our autism, our medically fragile, our social emotional, our pre-K to 2, our youngest students, and those students who could not access remote learning back in March because of access issues, parents working on front lines, support, or those students who had home or food insecurity issues. These are all students that we know from the data were disproportionately impacted, and we need to make sure they're a priority in our reopening. And finally, in terms of values, the commitment to a healthy process. It's transparent and inclusive in the process, in the challenges, and in the possible solutions. This was certainly the grounding of our multiple weekly updates that took place during the closure, and it's the basis of seeking input through a variety of means: our surveys, our town halls, and school committee meetings like tonight. You know, throughout June and July, we've been working as a learning community to plan for what a fall reopening could look like. And that's certainly one that is unlike any of us have ever experienced before. You know, we have 3 plans due to DESE. July 31st is a survey plan, and then August 10th will be the full plan. And this is to address a 3-prong approach, one which would bring all students back in person at one time, a hybrid, which in our case could either be a week on, week off, or it could be a 2-day model of a cohort A, and then a 2-day model of a cohort B, with Wednesdays being a full remote, and then of course a full remote option. You know, critical to the process has been and will be continuing to find ways for stakeholders to share their voice and expertise. A few of the key committees that have come into existence or are being formed in process for this particular purpose has been one from almost the inception of the emergency leave, our city and district reopening task force, where our city and district departments come together on a regular basis to share information and manage the crisis. Environmental health and safety task force, which is newly formed, and this has DPW, facilities, health services, as well as union representation and some of our key departments from the school district all around the table to be able to look specifically at health and safety issues. PD courses, which we have offered, that have given educators the chance to look at literature and research on various reopening models and topics, and then share their thoughts and their recommendations. Grade span teams, which have looked at through guiding questions of teaching, learning, and curriculum, what possible recommendations and solutions could be. And school-based reopening teams, which are in the process of being launched over the next few weeks, and they will stay in place all year long, not only as implementation teams to help the principal and leadership team, but also as review committees to constantly be reviewing data and figuring out what we can do better in our processes. And then finally, one that's been pretty unique, which has been with the district management group, which is affiliated through Harvard Business School. And here we've come together in a unique partnership with Salem and Cambridge Public Schools to share the common challenges and solutions for reopening. We review best practices that are happening around reopening across the nation. And most importantly, we peer review our reopening plans so that we can look at how they're developing and changing and what we might be able to learn from one another. We've appreciated the various pieces of guidance that have come out of DESE. Sometimes, however, the guidance has not come in a timely manner or addressed concerns that are unique to urban districts like ours. In each case, we strive not only to meet the guidance, but to exceed it, and fundamentally to do what is right for the Somerville Public Schools, given our city's unique density, programming, and disparate impact of the virus on our communities of color. Our ongoing planning and desire to meet and or exceed DESE's safety recommendations has led us to use the 6-foot social distance measure, not the 3. It's led us to require masks at pre-K to 12, to order and secure all types of PPE, gloves, masks, clear masks for language learners, gowns, face shields, room sanitizers, etc. To contract with a ventilation firm to assess all of our school buildings and make recommendations for any additional modifications we may need to make to better the ventilation and filtration, to work in collaboration with our city, as the mayor indicated, to try to put into a place a process for surveillance testing for our school community, to develop safety protocols for food prep and transport to classrooms and outdoor areas to minimize the congregating of students, to order new furniture and reconfigure learning spaces that better accommodate the 6-foot distance, social distance, to order bins, backpacks, school supplies that minimize the need for students to share instructional materials, to secure additional Chromebooks and hotspots so that students in K to 12 and those needing connectivity can fully access. These are just to name a few of all that we've worked toward thus far. As we announced this past Friday, and as the mayor indicated, our process in the decision to use 6 foot as our social distance guideline does not make it possible for us to bring all of our students physically back at one time for the start of school. We believe it's a safety issue. Although we will provide the state with the required plans that address the full in-person, the hybrid, and the remote options, we are choosing to focus and put energy toward developing out the hybrid and remote options for the start of school, as these two models need to coexist together, and districts need to be able to move fluidly from the hybrid to remote and remote to hybrid, depending on the trajectory of the virus and the advice of health officials. Both the hybrid and the remote models reflect changes in the school schedule and working conditions, and therefore they need to be impact bargaining with our various unions, a process we've been planning for and look forward to work collaboratively in the coming weeks. In the short term, we will continue to work through the remaining challenges, and there are many, relative to things like bus transportation, staff medical accommodations and personal leave needs, substitute models, testing capacity for staff, making necessary modifications to buildings, ventilations, and filtration, seeking outdoor classroom solutions, and these are just to name a few. And these will be tackled over the coming weeks, fast and furious, and on a daily basis. In the longer term, we will work hard and look forward to a time when our whole community can safely be reunited, where all students and staff can come back every day as they did pre-March 11th. But the virus and the data will determine when that time will be possible. As a district, we and I want to thank everyone for their patience, their flexibility, and their collaboration during what is by far one of the most complex and stressful times we've all faced as a community. We will do this as we do everything in Somerville, as a strong and caring community. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And on behalf of the school committee, I really want to thank all of our educators, our staff, our community partners, our city partners, the families and guardians we've heard from. I particularly love the students we've heard from about how the spring went, what they're hoping for, what they need from us as a community, whether it's in the educational sense, but also, as many of you know, our family liaisons are now full-time and reaching out even more to meet all of those needs going forward. So also on behalf of the school committee, we encourage everyone, I know all of our phones are ringing and emails are coming in, and we are listening very hard tonight. The public comment is a night for listening, and also if you'd like to send us emails, if you're commenting, if you want to send us the written version of your comments, or if public comment is not your thing, please still take that time. I have to read the guidelines, and then we're going to get to the list of our public speakers. So public comment is open to all Somerville residents before each, okay, we've done that, this the sign up part. As a chair, I will allow non-Somerville residents who are employees of the Somerville Public School to speak. I think that's an important component to hear from all of the stakeholders in the situation. Speakers will typically are allowed at 3 minutes, but given the number, it's going to be 2 minutes each. If we let public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between citizens and the committee. It is a resident's opportunity to express his or her opinion on issues of school committee business. Public comment is intended for the school committee to receive input from the public, but not as a method to receive specific requests, which should be channeled through school and district leadership or individually to a school committee member. This and school committee members will not reply to public comment in the course of the meeting. Though individual members may follow up and items from public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The committee and or administrators will not be prepared to directly respond to citizens' questions, posed in this forum. Public comment is a matter of public record. Speakers should be aware that all meetings of the Somerville School Committee are filmed live on public access and are recorded for future viewing. Public comments may also be made part of the minutes of the meeting. Submission of a written copy of your comments is encouraged, and comments without a written submission will also be summarized in the official minutes. Public comment is not an opportunity to speak specifically about specific employees of Somerville Public Schools in any way that they can be identified. Any attempt to do so will be immediately ruled out of order, and the chair and by the chair, and speakers will not be allowed to continue. So with that, I'm going to give a list of like 3 or 4 public names in order so that you can be prepared. And when it is your turn to speak, I ask that you identify yourself by name and your address, please. And so the first 4 speakers, Dan Moore, then Adam McLean, then Vivian Abrian, and then Angelique Murillo. So Dan Moore. Dan, are you there? Are you able to? I'm not sure. Are you?
Dan, you're unmuted if you'd like to participate.
I think that's part of the screen.
Wait, it looks like Dan has joined in 3 different instances. Dan, I'm going to give you a few more seconds, and then I'll try the other Dan Moore joining to see if you're connected through there. Okay, going over to the next one.
Dan Moore, are you with us?
I see no problem.
All right, Dan, are you with us?
I think it's showing her. We would hear us on this.
Maybe, is there a third to try,
Yes.
or should we move on to the next speaker and then when he's able to join us?
Yes, let's move on to the next speaker, and I will chat him directly to see when he's ready. We'll circle back.
Thank you so much, Jess. Adam McLean, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. So my name is Adam McLean, and I have been a K-8 music teacher at the East Somerville Community School since 2011. First, I would like to say thank you to all of you for your continued support of music and arts education in the Somerville Public Schools. This support represents your commitment to the whole child and to the social emotional learning of every student. Music is a cultural necessity and a human right, and it remains a critical part of public education during the pandemic. As a music teacher, I would like to share my perspective about the in-person components of the hybrid model. In this model, staff like me who work with multiple cohorts still have a high level of exposure to many students, which increases the health risk for us as educators as well as for all the students we see. This is true for any staff member who works with multiple cohorts as well, including but not limited to drama teachers, library teachers, art teachers, PE teachers, reading specialists, resource room staff, as well as most middle grades and high school teachers. Furthermore, I invite you to consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In order for students to experience self-growth, they first need to have their physiological and safety needs met. During in-person instruction, the focus of most of the school day would be on hygienic procedures, even in a hybrid model. Maslow teaches us that meaningful learning is not just difficult, but is actually impossible when students are not in a safe and healthy environment. Likewise, with teachers fearing for our own safety, it is impossible for us to do meaningful planning and teaching until our safety is guaranteed. Given the current state of the pandemic, it is clear that the only viable option for the beginning of the school year is fully remote instruction. I would also add, with respect, that until the school committee is again meeting in person, no SPS staff should be asked to meet in person in any model. Thank you for your time and for your attention to this matter, which is of the utmost importance.
Very well timed. Is Dan Moore able to join us, or should we move on?
He's still non-responsive. Let's give him a few minutes and go on to our
Okay.
next public comment.
Thank you very much. Vivian Abraham? Vivian, are you able to join us?
Yes, Vivian, you are unmuted if you'd like to go ahead and speak at this time.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself. My name is Vivian Abraham. I live at 5 Glenwood Road in Somerville. I'm the parent of a rising high school freshman. The superintendent basically said all of the things that I was planning to say, but I'll just take a second, if I can, to tell you that as my personal experience as a parent of a special needs child during the spring was that it was incredibly difficult. It was basically, I was working 2 jobs. I was working full-time from home, and also I was doing all of the teaching and all of the special ed support, except for just a few hours a week that my son had with his teachers. His teachers were very dedicated, and I know they did a lot of hard work on this, but any model that is online predominantly needs to keep students more engaged during class, to give them more support for the work they have to do at home. It needs a way to allow students to have the social interactions that are vital to the school experience, and to support special needs kids and help them to build those executive function and social emotional skills. I really appreciate everybody's hard work on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go down to Angelique Murillo, and then if Dan is able to join us, we will keep checking in.
All right, Angelique, you are unmuted. It looks like we've got an Angelique Santamaro. Would that be the same person?
I am not sure.
Okay,
I don't think so.
That's the
No,
only
I don't think
Angelique
so.
we have present on the list. So let's skip that, and then I'll circle back and chat with her.
Okay,
Let's go ahead
so
and,
thank you for that. So the next series of names is Vanessa Butolt, David Nuremberg, and then Swetha Kaluri. Vanessa?
okay. Vanessa, you're unmuted and ready to go.
Okay. I would like to talk on behalf of the instrumental teachers in the high school music department. There are a few issues that I would like to discuss. The first is regarding the high school schedule that is now proposing that high school music ensembles meet from 3 to 3:45, 4 days a week. This brings up 2 issues. The first is that it would require licensed K-12 teachers to teach after the school day ends. This competes with athletics and extracurricular activities. It also causes inequity to rotating teachers who are in and out of the building. Due to the size of the department, it would require high school music teachers to remain in the building every week. Additionally, this recategorizes music ensembles as an after-school enrichment option, which would compete with athletics, part-time job employment, and other after-school activities for our students. This will undoubtedly hurt the music program. It will place music in the light of optional and not necessary and remove it as a substantial core part of every student's curriculum. This is going backwards and not forwards. It will impact our enrollment and remove performing arts education from the rich daily academic experience now available to students at Somerville High School. This could severely impact part-time staff who rely on teaching additional music after school, who teach in all city music ensembles, and to teachers who are dependent on being home after school for childcare and other reasons. One question that has been has risen is whether other departments are also being asked to make the same sacrifice. Beyond this, I just also wanted to bring up a couple more issues regarding general music teachers, instrumental teachers, and district-wide teachers. I can speak from personal experience that I teach in rooms with no windows, hallways without adequate ventilation, or space for social distancing. I teach at 4 different schools, so in the case that I was to contract COVID, there's issues regarding contact tracing. In general, specialty teachers see hundreds of students. And with all of this said, DESE has said, quote, "It is an integral part of the learning experience for every student at every grade level." And this is regarding art and music. So my biggest concern is that moving ahead with either remote or hybrid plans, that all specialty and instrumental and music teachers be considered, because we are a core part of the curriculum. We are a core part of the school day, and that needs to be highly considered. Thank you.
Thank you. David Nuremberg and Jess, if you are able to start the timer when the next speaker, I know you're juggling, but if you could start the timer the next time someone starts to speak, that would be helpful.
Yes, that's no problem.
Thank you.
It looks like David has either left or is under a different name. Do you want to jump to the next participant?
Sure. Let me just highlight his name. I want to try to check back and see if any of these people are able to join us later.
Okay.
So with the next couple of names, Swetha Karuli, Rebecca Brown, Emily Fishman, and then Gabriel Jaquette. So.
Perfect. So Swetha, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Good evening. My name is Swetha Kaluri. My address is 5 Cherry Street, and I teach 6th grade at the Kennedy School. I'm here today to speak to you about why remote learning is the only way that we can reopen our schools safely. In a socially distant education, students will not be allowed to collaborate, approach their teacher, or get help from their teacher within 6 feet, and will need to stay at their seats working independently all day. We are talking about children, not robots or machines. Children cannot just flip a switch and follow guidelines that do not match their experience of school being a place where they get to see and interact with their teachers and their friends. Even in a hybrid model, there will be breaches in protocols in every single school, every single day, and members of our school community will pay, some with their lives, others with permanent damage to their health. In a hybrid model, teachers will be expected to teach in person and remotely at the same time, in addition to managing social distancing, enforcing mask use, and maintaining sanitizing procedures. We cannot teach, and our students cannot learn under these conditions. We should be investing our time and resources into making remote learning the best that it can be. We should be ensuring that all students have a device and internet access, are provided with supply kits to support their learning in every subject, and that teachers are provided with professional development to develop remote teaching strategies. I know that my colleagues and I can make remote learning an engaging and equitable experience for our students. I urge you to do the right thing and choose to start school remotely and keep our staff and students safe and healthy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Rebecca Brown.
Perfect. Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello. My name is Rebecca Brown. I live at 5 Maxwell's Green in Somerville. I am a parent, a community member, and a para at the Kennedy School. And I must insist that we do a gradual reopening of the schools with remote learning to start. I know that no matter what happens, my daughter will not be attending in-school learning, no matter what the decision is. And also, my conscience cannot allow for my medically fragile students to be exposed and put at risk. If I'm exposed, my students are exposed. Also, the entire therapy team will be exposed. Also, my daughter will be exposed, which will expose all of the 7th and 8th grade team, including all 70 or 80 students at our school. And I don't know what's going to happen if this happens, because if this happens, will we need to shut down the school again? Will we need to find substitutes? You know, this is a big concern, and I feel like there's no way to have this happen. And that's all my concerns are. And also to make sure that our medically fragile students are being taken into account in this, because they're often looked over. Thank you.
Thank you. So next is Emily Fishman, then Gabriel Jaquette, and then Margaret Whittier Ferguson. Emily?
Yeah, and Carrie, it looks like we've actually got David back and ready. Is it okay if we circle over to him?
David Neuenberg? Sure.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, David, the floor is yours.
You hear me? Yes. David Nuremberg, 8 Dixon Street. Thank you for taking my comment. To the committee, the superintendent, and the mayor, I do not envy the decisions you are now tasked with making. It is no exaggeration to say that lives hang in the balance. As a 20-year veteran public school teacher, as a professor and scholar of education, I am well aware of the body of research indicating that remote teaching results in worse learning outcomes than in-person classes, that students' social and emotional health benefit from the support of a school environment, particularly our most vulnerable children. And of course, as a parent of 2 SPS students, I recognize how parents and guardians rely on schools for childcare while they're at work. But at the same time, none of these goals, not learning, not socio-emotional and community support, not even childcare, can be met if COVID-19 is running rampant through our schools, sickening and even killing students, families, and teachers. In this situation, we must regard 100% remote learning, at least from the outset, for all of its drawbacks, as the lesser of 2 evils. It is bad for learning, it's better than hospitalization and death. Any degree of in-person reopening forces parents and teachers to assume a degree of risk and forces them to play odds with the lives of their children and teachers. Yes, there has been guidance provided from health officials. I don't mean to denigrate their work, but due to the circumstances, such guidance has been insufficiently tested and depends upon strict adherence that real, fallible human beings can't be relied to follow perfectly. I've been asked in my role as a public scholar to share best practices for hybrid or fully in-person classrooms in the era of COVID. I have responded, there aren't any. In a best case scenario, teaching and learning will be highly difficult for so many reasons. I repeat, this is one of those once in a generation times where humble public officials like yourselves hold lives in the balance with your decision. There is no perfect decision here, but there is a right decision. Please restrict school to remote until there is a proven vaccine or treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. And so next up is Emily Fishman.
Emily, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Emily Fishman, and I'll be starting my 9th year as a speech language therapist at the Capuano at 150 Glen Street. I have 2 main points: staffing flexibility and high needs priority. First, staffing flexibility. I'm concerned about staff such as myself who work with students across many classrooms. The moment calls for thinking way outside the box. Maybe the service providers consult daily and I provide OT, PT, speech counseling, and vision services to the students in 2 classrooms while another provider oversees all services for another 2 classrooms. At minimum, we should arrange classroom lists and caseloads based on who is electing to stay home and who is in school to lower the demand of teaching in person and online simultaneously. Second, we need to get some students into the buildings before others. My young students have high support needs. They're already behind their peers in their abilities to care for themselves, communicate, and problem solve for daily life. Many have regressed significantly since March, despite staff and family best efforts. They require specialized instruction beyond what a general education teacher can give them, never mind what parents have the capacity to support. Many cannot access any services digitally in a meaningful way. These are students who must have priority to return to the buildings. We also need to think about students whose families cannot get them to online education in spite of our flexibility for any number of factors. This may indeed come at the expense of students from lower need households and profiles, particularly in pre-K where provision of education is not mandated. I understand that families will struggle, but we must prioritize students whose futures will be irrevocably devastated the longer this educational interruption continues. This is the meaning of equity in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. So next, that was Emily.
Yeah, Carrie, we're
Gabriel.
going to go ahead and circle back to Angelique. She's ready.
Okay, thank you.
Angelique, the floor is yours. Looks like she's having a little bit of an issue. Let's go ahead and go down to our next list of names.
So Gabriel, are you there? And can you join us?
Perfect. Give me just a second, unmuting him.
Thank you.
Or her, sorry.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Perfect, yes.
Hello, thank you so much for all your hard work during these unprecedented times. My name is Gabrielle Jacquet. I'm at 24 Appleton Street in Somerville. I am a Somerville Public School parent, an academic emergency physician, and a public health practitioner with extensive experience working in epidemics. I am an essential worker on the front lines every day, and I strongly believe that our teachers are essential workers too. Throughout this time, I have never worked remotely, and I've been on the front lines caring for patients and following strict PPE guidelines. Myself and my colleagues have not gotten sick while doing this. In my practice, I'm sad to report that I've also been taking care of children who have been abused and neglected or suffered from other consequences attributed from school closure. My concern for remote learning is particularly our youngest learners, our learners with special needs and IEPs, and our learners who are learning English as a second language. They are going to suffer without the benefits of in-person learning, and I believe we are going to see these consequences for many years to come. I'm also concerned because of talking to other parents and the formation of virtual learning pods, which will most certainly exacerbate inequities, racial and cultural segregation, and the opportunity gap within our schools and our town. It isolates students from their peers and importantly from their teachers. While virtual learning may sound safer to some, it brings with it the risk of increased child abuse, neglect, food insecurity, and mental health instability. There is a small risk with reopening as well, but I believe we should prioritize reopening schools during this pandemic. The numbers support it if you look at the infection rates and the WHO guidelines, and I'm happy to elaborate more offline. Masking and distancing, especially with the 6-foot limit, has worked well in summer camps, including with the Somerville Recreation Department, and I believe we can do it in our school system as well. We can use things such as outdoor learning and be creative and think outside the box. We can also implement a district-based testing initiative, and I'm happy to provide contacts to make this happen. The AAP also endorses this as well, given our local numbers of infection rates. Finally, there's a wealth of expertise in our parent community to please help get our children back to the classroom where they can learn and benefit from all the wonderful things that our essential worker teachers do. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Gabrielle. Angelique, are you with us now?
Let's go ahead and jump over to Margaret Whittier Ferguson, and then Angelique,
Okay.
you'll be on deck.
Beautiful. Margaret, are you with us?
Very good. And if you don't mind me chiming in, it looks like a lot of our attendees that have signed up for public comment are self-muted. So if you guys will make sure to unmute yourself when it is your turn, I will unmute you. It looks like that's what our issue is. So just make sure that you're unmuted. Margaret, are you available?
Margaret, are you there?
All right. It's not looking like that's the case. Let's go ahead and try Angelique while we're at it.
Okay.
Angelique, are you there?
I'm here.
Welcome. Go ahead.
All right. So my name's Angelique Murillo Santamaro. I got married, Carrie. I have two kids at Genziano, and I'm the clinical coordinator of the SEEK program at the Kennedy School. For the past few weeks, I've been talking to friends and fellow fellow educator, has been really flabbergasted at the fact that we're even considering opening schools back in person without a vaccine. And then I realized that as an educator, I'm somewhat to blame. So 33 is the number of lunches that I sacrificed from September to March. 27 is the number of prep periods that I sacrificed because I was needed by a student or in a meeting. 4 days of vacation I sacrificed because I was on the phone with providers or parents because kids needed me. $530.89 I sacrificed because I needed to buy supplies for my kids. Never once did I say this was unfair. Never once did I speak to my supervisor about this not being okay. But now I'm being asked to sacrifice my life. Now I'm being asked to potentially sacrifice the life of my father-in-law who's on chemo. I'm potentially being asked to have my kids not spend Christmas with their grandfather because you're asking me to walk into an unsafe situation. You're asking me to walk into a classroom where we can't even hold a meeting in person. We know that this isn't safe. This isn't fair. Please do not ask me to sacrifice this. I sacrificed so much for this job. I've sacrificed, no joke, I've sacrificed fingers for this job. Please, please don't ask me to sacrifice my family, my kids, or myself, or my colleagues. Florida reported a 23% increase in kids being hospitalized because of COVID. We will undeniably bury a student. Please, don't make us make that sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Perfect. So it looks like we've got Lindsay up on deck while Margaret is getting her audio connected. So we've got Lindsay, and then next up we'll have Diana Young, Ian Umansky, and Jane Gardner. Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, my name is Lindsay Toscas, and I live at 5 Cherry Street, number 214 in Somerville. Sending teachers, students, and staff back into the building to begin the school year will create an unsafe workplace and learning environment. Since March 11th, I have followed recommended guidelines to keep myself and my family healthy. Returning to school will mean an end to seeing and caring for the people I love most. By sending me back to school, you are devaluing my life outside of the workplace and putting my health at risk. By sending us back to school, you are devaluing and endangering the city population, especially our most vulnerable families. If there is one illness, or worse, one death, among staff, students, and families due to the virus, it will be too many. Many skeptics in the city, state, and across the country have slammed teachers and the spring educational experience. What they dismiss is the fact that teachers, unlike other frontline workers who have been praised for their efforts, had approximately 20 hours to relearn their jobs with little training, resources, and even less guidance. We cannot have a fixed mindset going into the school year. To anticipate the worst outcomes, failures, and ineffectiveness of teachers only perpetuates this. Rather than spending time on fear and enhancing inequities by implementing an unsafe learning model, I urge you to consider the following. Let us begin the year in a remote learning model and provide us, teachers, students, and families, with the time, tools, and resources to be successful. Let go of saying they can't and they won't, and embrace a growth mindset. Provide us with the resources to do our jobs and start believing that they can and they will. We cannot continue on the same educational path. Everything has changed and we must now change the system. The push for in-person learning should not trump what we know to be the best scientific and public health practices. Remember, the decisions you make will have long-term effects on the health and well-being of this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And Margaret Whittier-Ferguson, over to you now. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you. My name is Margaret Whittier-Ferguson and I live in Roxbury. I'm a pre-K paraprofessional working at the Capuano. I want to make it clear that we need to be actively engaging with educators in the community around the issue of reopening schools. 84% of the Somerville Teachers Association prefers remote instruction to start in the fall, but the reality is that many of our students need in-person learning as soon as public health metrics dictate that it's safe, but those metrics are not currently being met. Just like the paraprofessional campaign, we need to build a strong movement of educators and families to ensure a safe reopening for students and educators. Educators and families should be deciding when and how we reopen. In order for in-person learning to be safe, we need a massive overhaul of school infrastructure. 53% of schools nationwide need repairs, and Somerville is no exception. There should be a massive jobs program to revamp school infrastructure while we begin remote learning in the fall. Additionally, families need rent and mortgage freezes and free emergency childcare services, as well as high-quality internet access and devices for all students so they don't have to share with siblings at home. Educators are going to need a massive amount of PPE, particularly in SPED classrooms and early education. The reality is that our students are going to be coming back incredibly dysregulated, and we need a massive increase in staffing to decrease class sizes to at most 10 students per class, even if we are going remote. We need more counselors, nurses, teachers, and paraprofessionals, and this additional staff should be kept on to ensure class sizes stay small beyond this crisis. As a pre-K educator, I'm very concerned about the health and safety of my students and their families. While remote learning is not ideal for 4- and 5-year-olds, I have faith in my colleagues to make it work while we are fully investing in our public schools and making them safe for an in-person return. The school committee should be calling for fully funded public schools at a statewide level to ensure we can properly phase in reopening schools in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Diana Young, the floor is now yours.
Hi, I live at 24 Charnwood Road, and I am a teacher at the Argenziano School. I fully support a remote start to the school year for the safety of all students and staff. I do not believe a hybrid model is feasible at this point. Even in small groups on alternating days, everyone will still have the same amount of exposure by being in the same classroom with the same teacher. There are also issues with bathrooms, especially in the younger grades. My kindergarten classroom includes a bathroom, but the kindergarten across the hall does not. We've always shared this bathroom to avoid young children having access. This would not work in a hybrid model. I also think it's really important for families to know that if kindergarten students are back in school in September, it will not be like any kindergarten that I know. Students will be sitting alone, doing probably lots of worksheets. They're not or high fives, no circle time or interactive morning meeting. I won't be able to help students learn to pick their pencils correctly or teach facial expressions, learning about different feelings, since we'll be wearing face masks. Finally, every year during the first few days, there are plenty of tears saying goodbye to families. Typically, students calm down quickly after holding my hand or sitting close for a story or getting a big hug. I can't imagine the amount of tears this year will bring. I honestly have no idea how to comfort a crying child from 6 feet away. So, for any parent listening, please imagine saying goodbye to your crying child outside the building, knowing any comfort they will get from a teacher will be from a teacher wearing a face mask from 6 feet away. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And Ian, we're over to you next, and we've got Jane Gardner, Kinga Barandi, Kate Sackton, and Missy Mateus on deck. Ian, the floor is now yours.
Hi, my name is Ian Umansky, and I'm a career and technical education teacher at the Edgerly Education Center. I do not feel that there's any safe way to start classes with a hybrid learning system. The Edgerly is an old building with no HVAC system whatsoever. There is nothing to circulate the air in the building. We have a window air conditioner that could blow air into the room, and the air could leave the room and the window next to it if it is open. That might exchange air right next to the window, but nowhere else. There are floor-to-ceiling partitions in the room. Parents have always sent their kids to school sick, and there's nothing that convinces me it would stop in these times. We all know about the asymptomatic cases of COVID-19. The concern about social emotional development of students regarding remote learning is not really a factor due to the social distancing requirements. The students that are in school will lose more time while the educator is policing social distancing efforts. The students would most likely be better off with all their time and efforts directed to remote learning. One extra death would far outweigh the temporary benefits of an earlier opening. The funds Mr. Gorski just spoke about that are available for PPE or technology would be better spent on technology to better remote learning. These items would be available for years to come and not expended in the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Jane, you're up next. The floor is now yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jane Gardner. I'm a first grade teacher at the Argenziano School. Remote learning is the safest form of learning for everyone. Anyone who has a weak immune system or has been exposed to someone who has the virus is able to pass it on to someone else. Children haven't been exposed to others that may be sick in an enclosed environment like a school in a long time. I don't think any parent wants their child to be the first to test this out. Symptoms for COVID are similar to other health conditions, and not being sure of your sickness adds anxiety to the situation. This leads to the school community being more susceptible to the virus. Students need to start with remote instruction and use a phased-in approach to in-person instruction when the virus is gone and it's safe to do so. Teachers can build initial relationships with their students without wearing a mask and shield online. I can't imagine having an upset student in my classroom and not being able to hug that student because I have to stay 6 feet away. If we prepare a robust remote learning program now, then we will be better prepared for the seasonal likelihood of another quarantine. Remote learning can be personalized, and my colleagues and I can work together to provide interventions needed for students in the intervals that they are needed. Somerville did an excellent job last spring providing needed technology to families, and this can be done again. The educators in the Somerville Public Schools are in love with teaching, care deeply for their own students and families, and it is my position that starting remotely will allow us to get back to the classroom responsibly and safely with a death count of 0. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jane. Kinga Barandi, you're up next, and then we've got Kate Sackton, Missy Mateus, Ray Woodcock, and Rebecca Enzana on deck. Kinga, the floor is now yours.
Good evening. My name is Kinga Barandi. I'm a first grade paraprofessional ELL at Argenziano School. I live on Lantern Street in Somerville. And I want to urge the school committee and the superintendent to forego any kind of planning for in-person or hybrid models. I urge you to just focus on remote learning and make it the best learning absolutely possible. To create a new concept for schools in Somerville, one that are outside the traditional box of the classroom, maybe have teachers working in cross-curricular and cross-age and grade lines, and that we can address the equity issues and concerns and address systemic racial bias and inequality. I challenge Mayor Joe Curtatone to wire the whole of Somerville for free internet access for everybody. This is not an unachievable goal. Towns in many communities have done so. The town of Playa de Aro in Girona, Spain had free internet for everybody. All you had to do was open your computer. Nobody had to pay for it. You walked down the street. It was free and clear and absolutely wonderful. And I challenge the school committee to work with your educators, all of whom are professionals and have ideas that are creative beyond your imaginations, and to create something that is outside of the whole regular American school system. The Danes teach outside. They invested in hand washing troughs. They've been teaching outside since the 13th, since March. And this is achievable and it can be done, and it should be definitely remote and online learning, not at all hybrid, because hybrid is a lie. Thank you.
Thank you, Kinga. Kate Sackton, the floor is now yours.
Hello, thank you. I am a parent at 20 Wallace Street in Somerville, and I have 2 children at the Brown School, and children are adaptable. Children have already gotten used to masking and social distancing, and sure, there will be slip-ups. No expectation from health experts is that people follow social distancing and masking perfectly all the time. It's built into the models. These things are keeping people safe, and we have in Massachusetts a low infection rate, and we have a seasonal culture. We should take the opportunity when we can be incorporating outdoor learning, we can be incorporating open windows and the chance for our children to get to know their teachers in person. If we could build that relationship for just 3 or 4 weeks before we should, well, keeping track of the metrics of public health and the tracing that the mayor mentioned, and implementing things that will, at the moment that there's any sign of a single infection, we will be aware of these things, but we need to take advantage of the good weather and the opportunity to build relationships. My child can't be comforted, my young child cannot be comforted maybe from 6 feet away by a teacher wearing a mask. Well, you try comforting my child when he's stormed out of the room because he doesn't know you, he has no relationship with a teacher who's just a face on a screen, is not going to be able to learn completely remotely at such a young age. The most needy children, the ELL students, the special needs students, they need to build these relationships in person. Let's please take advantage of the low infection rate that will make this initial hybrid model safe to begin the school year, to build those relationships. We can go remote when we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We've got Missy Mateus up, followed by Ray Woodcock, Rebecca Enzana, and Rami Bridge. And at that point, Dan Moore, we're going to circle back to you if you're ready and able to speak. So Missy, the floor is now yours.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Missy Matisse, and I live at 21 Malvern Avenue in Somerville. I'm a first grade teacher, and I know and acknowledge how hard this pandemic and virtual learning has been on families and decision makers this past spring. So thank you for your hard work in that area. However, the pandemic is still a very large threat to the health of children, their families, and staff. Little is known about the long-term health risks for adults and children. I love teaching, I love my students, and most of all, I love interacting in person with my students. However, the current guidelines are not safe for in-person instruction. In my first grade classroom, children work collaboratively almost all of the day. They share materials, play games, and laugh with one another. The current in-person guidelines scare me. These children are used to interacting closely with one another, and they require a lot of love and assistance from the adults around them. I'm asked to help blow their noses, tie shoes, and open snacks constantly. At morning drop-off, I show love by crouching down to be at their level and guiding them into the classroom if they're feeling anxious. During active shooter drills, I have to put all 25 of my first graders into our class bathroom. There is no way to keep 6 feet of distance during these tasks and support their social and emotional needs. Furthermore, I am responsible for teaching them how to read. We share books. I help them point to words and build words on boards in their laps. With the current guidelines, none of my classroom instruction would be safe or effective for myself or my students. Having students sit forward, masked, and at a distance is not even safe due to the airborne nature of this virus and a long period of time indoors. And there's no testing or tracing plan in place for teachers and students. If the hands-on, loving nature of a classroom is stripped and students cannot socialize and there is a risk of falling ill, I believe it is not worth it to be in person to start the school year. We need to be thinking about more innovative ways to interact with students to provide them with the relationship building they need. Using our city's outdoor spaces could be a start. Lastly, we need to be thinking about the science and the undeniable risk of a second wave. Is there a certain transmission rate the state needs to maintain in order to be in person? At this time, we should be focusing on robust and equitable remote learning. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Missy. Ray Woodcock, the floor is now yours. Ray, if you're able to unmute yourself, the floor is now yours. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump down to Rebecca Enzana at this time. Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I am a parent of a rising first grader, and we live at 36 Albion Street here in Somerville in Ward 5. I am a healthcare worker at Mass General Hospital and also an educator. I first want to acknowledge the high emotions that I'm hearing on the part of our faculty on this call, and I stand with you in your fear, but I also want to acknowledge that myself and my colleagues have people coughing in our faces all day, every day at the hospital who have positive COVID tests, and we have yet to get sick. PPE does work, and I think it's important that we all remind ourselves of that. I also know that you didn't sign up to be an essential worker, but we do look to you as more than childcare. You are educating our children. There is significant data globally that children under 10 years old are not transmitting this virus. In fact, there is not one single case around the entire world of a child under 10 transmitting this virus. So when I think about reinstating in-person learning for early elementary education, this is the data that I'm thinking about. And I think we have to realign ourselves and refocus ourselves on the data at hand. I also want to mention that my daughter, who is 6, has been in summertime camp with her friends for several weeks now, wearing masks, and it is an absolute non-issue. They have acclimated completely. They are also with counselors who are not allowed to touch them per regulations, and yet they still get scrapes. They, you know, bump around, and they are incredibly resilient. So don't discredit their ability to adapt. The last thing is that one size should not fit all for students in SPS, and with equity at the forefront, we can come up with different models for different families and different needs, and please use our community as a resource. We live near Boston. We have many people here in SPS as parents who are part of the education and healthcare community. Let us help you help us.
Tess, are you there? Because next I have Rami Bridge, then Jeremy Brown, then Rana. Rami, are you there? Let's see.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. My name is Rami Bridge, and I'm the president of the Somerville Teachers Association. Members of school committee, you are about to engage in an impossible task. You are tasked with finding the best way to reopen schools that make substantive learning possible while ensuring the health, safety, and emotional well-being of all the many adults and children who make up our schools. I've had literally hundreds of conversations with educators in Somerville and across the state this summer, and I can tell you that there are no good answers. The deeper you dive into this question, you will discover what we already know, that all of the options are bad. We believe that the best of these options is to begin the year remotely to ensure the health and safety of our community. The sooner we can make this decision, then the sooner we can go to work implementing it in the best way possible. Rather than go into all of the details of that decision, I want to talk for just a second about ventilation. For 8 years, I taught at the West Somerville Neighborhood School, one of the newer buildings in the district. For 5 of those years, I had something rare and invaluable. I had a working thermostat in my classroom. When the temperature was too hot, I could make it colder. When the temperature was too cold, I could make it warmer. For those of you who don't work in public school buildings, you won't understand what a truly rare and remarkable thing this was. Unfortunately, over the summer, one year the blower in my classroom broke. When I returned in the fall, I literally slipped on the floor because the entire room was covered in a moist layer of mildew. This was eventually cleaned up, but over the course of the next 3 years, the HVAC people came no less than a dozen times to try and repair my broken blower. Unfortunately, the thermostat has never returned to working condition. I tell you the story tonight to think about the air quality in our schools. The HVAC could not be repaired despite dozens of attempts to fix it. These are the conditions of our buildings that we are discussing returning educators and students into. Before, airflow sat somewhere between a funny story and a classroom management problem, as students napped in 90-degree heat or shivered under a blanket in the classroom when the classroom temperature literally dipped between 50 and 55 degrees. Now airflow is a question of life and death. This is just one story about one of the seemingly endless concerns associated with in-person learning, and you've heard a ton of them here tonight. I hope you will agree that the only safe way to begin the year is remotely.
Perfect. Thank you, Rami. Rana M., we're going to go over to you next. And then Dan Moore and Ray Woodcock, we're going to circle back to you. So Rana M., the floor is now yours.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Ronna McLaughlin. I'm at 96 Rogers Ave in Somerville, and I'm a mom to 2 kids who are SPS students. Spencer's almost 4, registered to start at Capuano, and Mila, age 6, will start first grade at Brown. My husband's an essential worker in manufacturing. He's required to work outside of our home daily, as with many professions. Remote is not an option for him. And I work for Partners Healthcare Information Systems, and thankful to be permitted to work remotely since school's closure. I've worked to help lead up telehealth initiatives whose needs have been fueled by COVID, but have now thankfully shifted the priority to in-person visits, given the lower rates of COVID in the state. Throughout the spring, my stress was through the roof, and my children often woke with nightmares. The anxiety levels and mental health of both children and parents is and was being pushed to its limits in dual income homes like mine, and so I can't imagine how those less privileged managed through. A few weeks ago, my son was able to return to his preschool full-time, and my daughter began the wonderful summer camp with Somerville Rec at Dillboy. They are so happy and finally back to sleeping well. 2 days after my son returned to preschool, he woke up to tell me about the wonderful and very funny dream he had. He had never, ever told me about a happy dream before. There are many daycares in Somerville currently doing an excellent job of providing full-time care to support the needs of working parents and providing opportunities for socialization while adhering to safety guidelines. And so I hope for our youngest students and those with special needs who can't yet independently navigate a screen or call on a friend, that in-person learning is prioritized with an added option for a fully remote virtual curriculum for those students and families who are medically fragile. And at the very minimum, we need a commitment of when or what threshold will the school system commit to an in-person return. Thank you.
Thank you, Rana. Ray Woodcock, we're going to circle back to you. The floor is now yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can. Go ahead, Ray.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ray Woodcock, and I'm a 6th grade teacher at the East at 50 Cross Street. Firstly, I'd like to request that translation services be worked out and available for these meetings as soon as possible. We have many families in this district who don't speak English, and several of them have communicated with me that they wanted to be a part of this conversation tonight. These families are valuable members of our school community and should be entitled to participate fully in these discussions. In regard to reopening, I recognize that no plan during a pandemic will be ideal for mental health. But when reflecting on the potential effects of the different plans, I keep coming back to this situation I was in a couple years ago, in which a parent of 2 separate students died very suddenly in the same week. So one of the reasons why this tragedy hit so hard was because it felt like the unthinkable was suddenly possible. And my team was very worried this news would start a mass panic of fear to the other kids about losing a parent. We wanted at the time to make sure they knew such a tragedy was rare. I support starting the year remote. Our HVAC systems are not designed like hospitals, as Romney described. If we return before the virus is under control and before our building's HVAC systems have been carefully evaluated and updated, the unthinkable will become inevitable, and we won't be able to reassure students that it's unlikely that tragedy could strike at any moment. Not only is this fear not conducive to learning, but I know I will not be the same person after all of this if I have to watch any one of my colleagues, loved ones, students, or their families get sick and die, especially knowing that we could have prevented this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. At this time, we're going to circle back to Dan Moore. Dan, are you with us? The floor is yours. Dan, are you there? All right, and we're going to go ahead and jump on over to Jeremy Brown, and then on deck will be Adam Harbaugh, Liz Stark, and Barbara Halpenny. Jeremy, give me just a second. Okay, Jeremy, the floor is now yours.
My name is Jeremy Brown. I live at 234 Summer Street. As an SPS parent of a rising 3rd grader, I've felt pretty out of the loop. I'm glad to have public meetings starting up, but they are frustratingly late with plans coming due in the next few days. That said, public schools are one of the few true social safety nets in our country. Teachers give every student a chance to succeed in life. Schools give scared students a safe place to be. Schools give food to hungry students, and schools give working parents a few hours to cover every day. There are real dangers to weakening this safety net. Kids will fall through the cracks. Parents, especially women, will fall out of the workforce and may never come back. And privileged families will flee the public schools. On a personal note, our 4-year-old daughter is doing great in a private preschool. Teachers and students had to adapt, but the kids do masks great. There is real learning going on, and the day is not dominated by the hygiene management. This year, public pre-K is not looking like a good option. Now, there are also risks to reopening the schools, but we have a lot of data now we didn't have in March. We have good data that under 10 seldom transmit COVID even within their own households, and we have good data that we can prevent transmission with distancing and masks in every age group. We also know remote learning is a pale shadow of in-person learning. I'm not just talking about winging it in the spring under chaotic conditions. Many of you probably know universities have been struggling for over a decade to figure out remote learning with online courses, and they are still a weak substitute for the rapport of physical presence. Our public schools are every bit as essential as our grocery stores, trash collection, and the fire department, not to mention medical. We would notice the consequences of trash piling up right away, but while the consequences of missing public school won't be as obvious in the short term, they will ultimately be felt for a generation or more. We should support teachers and staff as essential personnel, including ensuring their childcare and their safety. We owe it to everyone in the community to physically reopen the schools for as many students as possible. We can use the data to design strategies for different student age groups and teacher risk profiles. We design a staged reopening, prioritizing the most at-risk kids and clearly communicating the stage plans to parents and teachers. We can do this.
Thank you, Jeremy. Adam, over to you next. The floor is now yours. If you will unmute yourself, please, Adam Harbaugh. All right, we're going to go ahead and circle down to Liz Stark. And then on deck, we will have Barbara Halpenny, Gloria Salazar, and Megan Brady. Liz, the floor is, oh, it looks like Liz is, there we go. Liz, the floor is now yours.
All right, I'm unmuted. Thank you very much. I'm an ELL teacher at Scale, and thank you for allowing me to speak briefly about two issues regarding time, whether we're hybrid or remote. The first issue is, in order to overcome some of the major obstacles to remote learning that we teachers and students endured March through May, it feels essential that Scale delays the students' start date so that educators who are predominantly part-time workers have time to adjust their lives to new types of teaching schedules, design lessons for different new models of teaching, learn how to use technology that's being put in place or will be put in place for students to use, learn what the students are learning or will be taught this summer, send, deliver, and deliver necessary text to students' homes, and collaborate with department PA and counselors how to promote student long-term engagement with learning. The other time issue is, while 3-hour in-person classes worked for ELL teachers and students at Scale, it feels essential to significantly shorten the duration of individual online ELL classes, which means lower level ELLs need mostly synchronous class time learning, if it's remote, to access the content, objectives, and resources. As adults, and often parents, our students must juggle more disruptions when attending classes at home. Experience has taught me that students focus best when remote classes are reduced to an hour and a half maximum, like about the full, the time of a full-length movie at most. While reducing the duration of class hours, teachers and students do need built-in weekly time slots for teachers to hold office hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And Barbara, we're going to go over to you next. The floor is now yours.
Hi, my name's Barbara Halpenny. I live at 7 Lexington Ave. I'm a parent of this past spring a pre-kindergartner at Capuano, hoping that she will have some experience of kindergarten. And I didn't prepare a comment, but this meeting has been very
educational. Thank you for doing it. It's a very complex situation. It sounds like most of the teachers are terrified of going to school, and I'm wondering if you can consider any degree of, letting teachers who are more interested in being in person with kids do that, and those who are really concerned maybe do some of the more remote stuff. The remote for us, our experience was it was really actually worse than nothing in a way. It was hard to try to make it work. And so I'm also wondering if you can communicate to families what the, I don't know, what the options would be if we wanted to kind of opt out of doing it, or, what we're allowed to do. I'm a single parent. It was really hard to be working full-time and trying to help my child. She's doing a summer camp right now where it seems like all the kids are doing great with masks and sanitizers and distancing, and she loves her camp teacher. She made cards for them this weekend to take in Monday morning. I don't think that the masks have in any way seemingly stopped their bonding, and she's definitely learning things. So I hope something can be done this fall, at least for the young kids. That would be great. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. Next up, we'll go to Gloria Salazar, followed by Megan Brady, Sarah Marks, Lori Segal, and Roseanne Pulio. So Gloria Salazar, the floor is now yours. Go ahead, Gloria. You may need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. My name is Gloria Salazar, a teacher at the Winter Hill School, who has been in the system since 2001. Mayor Cordy, Superintendent Skipper, members of the school committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to begin by telling you I miss my students. I cannot wait to be back in school with them, but I am concerned. I am concerned about reopening school in a hybrid model. I am 55 years old and I have a heart condition. I am what is considered high risk. I also live with 2 people who are high risk. I want to express how sad I was when I got the communication from Human Resources asking me if I had health concerns and suggesting that I consider taking a year of FMLA without pay. I wish I could. I depend on my salary. I need my job, but I am also scared. I am scared that going back to work may mean losing my life. It seems very selfish, but I believe that being present in our buildings, even for hybrid model, would severely risk my students and their families. I also feel that the sooner we opt for a completely remote model, the better prepared we will be to do an appropriate job when we reopen schools. There are many successes that happened during the spring. And I want to say, in response to what the Superintendent Skipper was saying, I work with newcomers. My students are the newest arrivals to the country. I work with the middle school, and I was able to cover my curriculum during the spring. I actually got farther because I was able to have more flexibility with my time. I didn't have any interruptions. There were no concerts. There was nothing getting in the way of my teaching. So surprisingly enough, my kids were highly engaged. I had synchronous live lessons every single day for my newcomers. So there were
Thank you, Gloria.
successes.
That is all the time we have. We're going to need to go ahead and go over to Megan Brady at this time, but we do appreciate your comment. Megan Brady, the floor is now yours. If you'll unmute, please.
Hi, my name is Megan Brady, 5 Cherry Street, number 221. I teach at the Kennedy, and I'm Vice President of the Somerville Teachers Association. Tonight, I want to tell you about my mom. She was a paraprofessional in the 7th and 8th grade resource room for decades, and go figure, now I also teach 7th and 8th grade. My mom taught me compassion, patience, and empathy. She taught me how to reset every day and start fresh. In short, I'm a better teacher for my students because of the values and lessons I learned from my mom. My mom's actually with me at this moment. I'm moving tomorrow, and my mom is literally packing up my apartment right now so that I can attend this meeting. She's amazing, and I'm lucky to have her. And my mom is also my reason for why I want to start the year teaching remotely. Under a hybrid or in-person model, I will not be able to visit her every weekend for dinner like I normally do. And that thought is killing me inside. You've heard from my colleagues about why hybrid or in-person is neither safe nor feasible. Classrooms will not look like what we're accustomed to. Class activities will not run how we're accustomed. Even if students are less likely to transmit the virus between each other, there will still be dozens, if not more, educators in the buildings every day. And those educators have families and loved ones whose health we are responsible for. When you said earlier that we could move fluidly between the models as necessary, it's hard not to see that that's acknowledging that the virus is still a threat and that people can get sick, and that's not something I'm willing to accept. We tell students that a stressed brain cannot learn, but a stressed brain also cannot teach. Let's invest time and resources over the next month to make remote learning better. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. We'll now go over to Sarah Marks, followed by Lori Segal, Roseanne Pulio, and then we will circle back to Adam Harbaugh and Dan Moore for final public comments. Sarah Marks, the floor is now yours.
Hi, my name is Sarah Marks. I live at 11 Bowdoin Street. I'm the parent of a first grader, and I'm a public school teacher in another district. My family will be choosing the 100% remote option no matter what is decided and what is offered. The hybrid model is a lot of exposure for not a lot of benefit. Of course, I worry about my child missing out on her in-person first grade experience, but at this point, I'm honestly more worried about the trauma of her attending school with masks, with social distancing, and her teacher needing to spend so much of their time as a COVID safety monitor, everything that Ms. Young and other teachers described tonight. I don't think enough is being talked about the social emotional effects of school opening in person in these conditions. No one tonight who spoke so well is saying that remote learning is an adequate substitute for in-person learning, and yet I urge you to decide on a remote start now so that everybody in the system can focus on making remote learning work for every child and family in the city. As a resident of a long time who's made their forever home here, I'm really looking to the city for innovation in remote learning. That's the type of leadership that I would like to see from Somerville, as well as innovation and creative solutions around childcare and finding ways for kids who need to learn in person to be able to do so safely, safe for them and safe for teachers, to innovate around food and technology access, etc. So please decide on remote learning now so that we can move forward with a plan that works for everybody and takes into account what went well and what didn't go as well as it could have last spring. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And now we'll go over to Lori Segal, followed by Roseanne Pulio. Lori, the floor is yours.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Lori Siegel. I live at 25 Cherry Street. I have taught at scale the adult ed program for the city for 7 years. Our situation is different than the K through 12 schools. Our classrooms are in the basement of the Tab building on Holland Street. The rooms have very poor ventilation and none with operable windows. Second, many of our students are frontline workers. They're home health aides, supermarket workers, construction workers, and house cleaners. Some of them are immunocompromised and would be afraid to enter the building with other folks that are frontline workers. Third, half of our teachers are over 55, most over 60. And fourth, we teach language And in my case, I emphasize pronunciation very much. If I needed to wear a mask, my students wouldn't be able to see how I'm pronouncing words, which I try to do very clearly, so that they can see how to move the mouth and be able to pronounce words better. And for me, when the students were wearing masks, it makes them much harder to understand. So many of the staff that I've spoken with have wanted to proceed with remote learning, but none of us have been trained on how to teach in this way. We kind of muddled our way through in the spring, but we really need some serious training on how to do this better. Yeah, that's the main point. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. At this time, we'll go over to Roseanne Pulio, followed by Adam Harbaugh and Dan Moore. Roseanne, the floor is yours. Please be sure to unmute yourself, Roseanne. All right, we're going to go ahead and circle over to Adam Harbaugh at this time. Adam, same thing if you'll unmute yourself, please. And for those of you wondering, you can unmute by clicking on the microphone icon that currently has a red circle around it. Very good. Adam, are you with us? All right, we're going to go ahead and go on down to Dan Moore. All right, Dan, are you with us? All right, Dan, if you are with us, go ahead and unmute yourself, please. All right, it looks like all three of them are having difficulties. Carrie and Mary, would you like me to try one more time for each of them?
I think one more time, and then we are also going to be having school committee next Monday night, so there is another opportunity for public comment, but if you could try one more time, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, that's no problem. Let's go ahead and circle on back down to Roseanne. And just remember, if you are having any difficulties unmuting yourself, just look for that white microphone with the red circle. Let's see. Roseanne, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. We can. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. So my name is Roz Pulio and I live at 6 Dartmouth Street in Somerville. I am a parent of a rising first grader at East Somerville Community School, and I am a nurse practitioner at Lynn Community Health Center. And during the pandemic, I've been working in the COVID suspect unit where every patient was suspected to have COVID, and a vast majority of them were diagnosed with COVID, particularly in the height of the pandemic. And I'm not going to comment actually on whether or not we should return to school, because I feel like the speakers that we've had thus far have very eloquently and passionately stated their viewpoints, and quite frankly, I'm very torn. But one of the things I do want to comment on, and one of the things that I would like to hear spoken about at some point or a plan around, is what happens within the school if we are to return in person in some capacity. What is the healthcare like in our school? I do know that the high school has a school-based health center staffed by a nurse practitioner, but from my understanding, every other elementary school has just one nurse. And what happens to that nurse if they have one student, then 2 students, then 3 students, particularly when the flu season becomes, at, the height of the flu season? In my practice, when I'm seeing a patient, I see my patient, the patient then leaves, and then the room has to rest for 15 minutes. And I have the luxury of having multiple rooms to see my patients in, but that's not necessarily the case in the schools. And so I would just like to hear a little bit more around the plans for our school, what our school nurses are going to have to deal with. Are we going to get more staff? Are they going to have more space? Because I think that's also a very important piece of controlling the pandemic and keeping our students and staff safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Roz. Let's go ahead and circle on back to Adam. Adam Harbaugh, are you with us? All right, and last but not least, let's give Dan one more shot. Perfect. Dan, are you with us?
Okay.
There we go. I don't think that those two attendees are actively participating, so I'd recommend circling back to the rest of the order of business at this time.
Thank you, and I have them highlighted, and hopefully next time they can sign up to speak. So thank you everyone who has participated, who by either speaking, listening, or some combination of both. We don't normally meet over the summer, but there's nothing normal about these times. So we're meeting tonight, we'll meet again next week. And we will make decisions about more meetings coming up. There is a town hall this Wednesday and 2 more next week. So in addition to school committee meetings, there are sorry about that. It's possible it got loud at my house and I muted myself. So I just wanted to thank everyone for participating, whether speaking, listening, actively. I know it's important for the school committee and all of our staff to hear from the community. We will be meeting again next Monday for school committee at 7. This Wednesday, there's a town hall meeting. Next Wednesday, there are 2 town hall meetings, one in English and one in multiple languages. So, and you can always write or call school committee members as well. We want to hear from everyone. We haven't yet decided about what beyond next week, what the meeting schedule will look like. We don't normally meet during the summer, but obviously there's nothing normal about these times. So with that, and I encourage anyone who did speak, if they have written comments, to email them in so we can make sure we get an accurate record of what you said. So with that, the next item is the report of the superintendent. Superintendent, do you have anything more that you wanted to add, or did your comments earlier cover it? Are you muted, Mary? Okay. Let me see if we can take care of that. Oh. Try
okay,
now,
now
Mary.
I am. Okay, so no, Chair. My report was what I read initially. I would just like to thank all of the staff and the families, parents, and community members who spoke tonight to share their thinking with us.
Thank you for that. So the next item of business is new business, and I appreciate everyone's flexibility in taking the approval of reopening grants earlier at the top of the meeting. The next item of business is acceptance of donations. I'm looking for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept with gratitude the following donations. From the Somerville Education Foundation, $35,000 donated to the Somerville Public School STAR data analysis via Biogen grant.
Can I get a second? Thank you, Ms. Patone, for making the motion, and thank you, Dr. Ackman, for seconding. Is there any discussion? Mr. Green.
Just, $35,000 for data analysts. I'd love some details what that is.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Certainly. So this is a decision that Biogen made relative to being able to do the longitudinal studies on the impact of the out-of-school programming that we are doing through the STAR grant. Just as a reminder, the STAR grant supports citizen schools, Breakthrough, En route, You Aspire, and so these are some of our key partners. Biogen is that the grant that was given was done between us and the Cambridge Public Schools. So what they've done is to support data capacity building in both Cambridge and Somerville to be able to help our data analysts collect that data.
Is there any further discussion or questions? Can I get a roll call? Actually, before we that, the Somerville Education Foundation is also, just so people know, it's a 501c3 started by parents, community members, to be able to start fundraising for projects, whether it's out of school time scholarships for students. This is the first I've seen of a specific job analysis like this, so that's where that money comes from. With no further questions or comments, can I get a roll call vote on the approval of the donations, please?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Dr. Phillips?
I think she's back at the MAC training.
Ms. Krebshin?
Are you muted? Try it now, Alana.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
President McLaughlin? Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barish?
Yes.
Ms. Patone? Ms. Patone?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Dr. Ackman?
Yes.
And Ms. Norman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you for members of our community for doing fundraising to help support our students. Next item of business, items from board members. Are there any items? Ms. Patone? Ms. Patone?
I have a question.
Yes.
The superintendent shared with us that the initial survey report to DESE goes out on, sorry, I'm switching my headset. Sorry, I'm having troubles with audio. Can you still hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, I was on my phone and I'm switching back and forth. Apologies. She was very generous to help share us the timeline of end of July for the kind of overview to DESE, August 10th for the more detailed plan to DESE. Is there any information you can share either tonight or next Monday about the extended timeline so that we know an idea of when we might be able to share more with parents, as well as in particular about surveillance testing? And I know the mayor didn't speak to it, but maybe we can get an idea. Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair. So we are in a situation where I think information will develop daily. For instance, we received notification today that the Department of Ed is going to grant flexibility over the 180-day calendar and grant districts some leverage in terms of days. So when I say information comes quickly and changing and rapidly, it is just that. I think some of the information relative to the surveillance testing that the mayor spoke about and trying to get a system in place. I know the city is working hard on that, but it is a slow process. But as soon as there is information, the mayor and I have both made a commitment to share what we have with the community. I think similarly, when it comes to the building component and evaluation of the buildings, we have another walkthrough of buildings again on Thursday. So again, the commitment is to try to give updated information as it comes. So I would say that school committee will get regular updates, not only at the school committee meetings, but as additional information becomes available to the public.
Mayor Curtatone, are you with us now?
I thought I saw him.
I thought I saw him. But I would also say, as we keep learning in so many different ways about how interconnected we all are, this mayor spoke recently about the testing. As there's hotspots in other parts of the country, it's becoming harder for us to get tests. And so, Mayor Curtatone, would you like to speak to the testing and availability of it?
Yeah, I don't know what the question was. Let me just, for self-criticism, express my displeasure with this communications platform. It's been rough tonight, but for me.
Okay.
Anyway, but what was the question?
So Ms. Patone was asking if there's any sort of time frame on learning how, what the testing protocol and resources will be in the city. And I was saying that it's in so many ways with COVID, we're realizing how interconnected we are. As there's been an increase in hotspots in other parts of the country, we're having a harder time getting the test, all of the testing at the same levels that we did prior. So if there was some kind of, if you could speak to the testing.
So we don't have an answer today. We're working with our partners at Cambridge Health Alliance, developing a surveillance testing plan for how we would envision it based on health experts' advice, epidemiologists, and how to approach it for the school community. The one caveat you alluded to, Madam Chairwoman, is, you know, whatever we develop, whatever framework, one of the challenges we will have is supplies to support any plan. Reagent, swabs or reagent seems to be the bigger issue these days, as everything is understandably being diverted to places like Florida, Texas, Arizona, and the like. But we feel strongly, and I think you will also, when you see a plan, that it's highly needed in order to clearly understand, and something we should be doing in every community, but at least schools clearly understand how and if pandemic is changing, right, in terms of a resurgence. So our hope is by the end of the week to have something to be able to present to the school committee. I got an update earlier today, and I'll be checking in with the chairperson and the superintendent daily to let you know the status of that. There may be a basic framework that we lay out and other layers that may have to come into it. So I just want to caution everyone, this is evolving.
Thank you for that. Ms. Crutchin?
I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. The news coming out today about the option to have fewer days, that means we have the option, not that we're required to. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or items from new board members? I mean, from new items from board members? It's been a long day. Okay. Dr. Ackman, are there condolences?
Yes. The Somerville School Committee would like to extend its deepest condolences to the family of Patrick Murphy, father of Trish Murphy-Shee, teacher at Somerville High School, and to the family of Joan Miera, mother to Maureen Robichaud, next wave Full Circle teacher and wife of retired principal Fred O'Meara.
We are adjourned. Good night. Thank you for everyone for joining.
Thank you.